Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today. For this one we are going to do another Japanese sake review, and this will be sake review number 16 for you here on the channel. As I always say with these videos, I am by no means an expert when it comes to Japanese sake. It's just something that I really quite like actually. I really fell in love with sake when I've been over to Japan the last few times, and it's cool to do something just a little bit different for you guys here on the channel. For me, the Japanese sakes are even more kind of handmade and hands-on than the craft beers that I normally review for you. So I really just hope that you guys appreciate something a little bit different, and it's always cool to learn a little bit more about the Japanese sakes, of course, as well. So for this particular sake, we're going to go to Hyogo Prefecture, if I remember correctly, for the first time on the channel. And we're going to have a look at another one of the rather big sake producers in Japan. So this one comes to you from Hakutsuru Shuzo, or Hakutsuru Sake if you want to say it in English. And this sake is called the Sayuri Nigori. And if it's a Nigori sake, that means that it's unfiltered. And this one comes in at 12.5% alcohol. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it turns out actually. A lot of Japanese sake enthusiasts that I've spoken to have found it really curious that I enjoy the Nigoris. These are probably one of my favourite Japanese sake styles, along with the daiginjos, but you know, they're actually a little bit cheaper than some of the other ones that you're going to find, but I find them really nice and full flavoured, of course. But a lot of the Japanese want to go for the more expensive ones, but it should hopefully be a really nice sake, this one. They're a very well regarded company, this, and hopefully you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. I always enjoy doing these videos for you here on the channel. This is only the second sake review that I'm filming for you over here in Sweden as well, so that makes it a little bit more special. I've had this sake sitting for quite a little while actually. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the sake brewery before we taste it. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward a little bit. There's all the usual links in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Hakutsuru Shuzo. Very first time I'm trying one of their sakes, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer, whiskey, sake based on county, city, state, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of things in there as well. There is one for the sakes, I've reviewed one for the whiskies, and lots of different ones for the beers, because the channel's main focus is craft beer. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other whiskies, sakes and beers and things like that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is massively appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Hakutsuru Shuzo then, on to my brewery notes. And I will say, this is another one of the very old sake breweries rather in Japan. Most of them seem to have started up around the time of the Meiji Restoration, which was like 1872 or 1867. I forget exactly which one it is, but a lot of them seem to have started around that time. But Hakutsuru Shuzo, on the other hand, was founded back in 1743, and you can find it in the Nada district of Kobe in Hyogo Prefecture in Japan, in the Kansai region, not too far away from Osaka. Kobe is a city that I definitely need to go over and check out, because I've just never done it yet actually. But the company is run by the Kano family, and they call their sake Shira Kano, which translates into English as the white crane, and that's why you'll see this sort of bird on a lot of their imagery. I'm not sure if it's on the front, but I'll show you it on the bottle in a little minute. It's basically the same bird that is the symbol of Japan Airlines. But they adopted the Hakutsuru name for their sakes in 1747, and this was later registered as a trademark in 1885. So they continued to expand over the years, and they became a joint stock company, or gomei as it's called in Japan, in 1897, and later in 1934 they opened up their art museum, which is called the Hakutsuru Bijutsukan, which is Japan's largest art collection. I've never heard of a brewery owning an art museum, if you like, but it's Japan's largest private art collection. There's a lot of bronze things and china and stuff in there that, if you're an art lover, apparently it is very worth going to have a little look at that. But in 1964 they constructed their Shiki brewery, and they opened their museum for that in 1982, which again I've heard is definitely worth going to check out, so maybe that's something I need to do as well. In more recent times though, this brewery have developed a special rice variety which is called Shiratsuru Nishiki, which is used in a number of their sakes today, and they completed their new Kuryozake factory in 2012, and then they acquired the Umenishikawa Shuzo company from Ehime Prefecture in 2016, which operates as a wholly owned subsidiary, but they do distribute these Umenishikawa sakes around the whole of Japan, from what I understand. But today they've got around 15 different sakes in their regular range, lots of different styles, you know, ginjo, daiginjo, junmai, and all of these kind of things. And they also produce plum wine. But one of the most unusual facts about this particular sake company is that they also produce cosmetics, and these cosmetics are made from the spent rice that's used, that comes out of the brewing process. The brewing process for sake, of course, is very, very similar to beer in a lot of ways. I mean, you use your rice, you put the bacteria in, and or the yeast and stuff in, and you let it ferment, but then you've got rice left at the end of this, which, you know, can be used for different things. So Hakutsuru Shuzo are using them for cosmetics, and I believe there's an actress or something, quite a famous Japanese actress, who is the face of these different cosmetics and things that they use. So I have to say, that's one of the most unusual stories I've heard from a Japanese brewing company. Probably the other ones that I can think of, the other really unusual one I remember from Japan is that one of the craft breweries is in the back of a furniture shop, which is you know, really unusual, and their beers were actually pretty damn good from what I remember as well. So it kind of goes to show you the Japanese entrepreneurial spirit, if you like. They really are very clever when it comes to thinking of new ways to use stuff. Of course, that's, you know, the Japanese cameras. The reason Japan got so good at cameras was based on the technology in the Zero fighter planes, gun sights, you know, there are things like that. The Japanese are crazy when it comes to thinking about how to use stuff in different ways. You know, you have to take your hat off to them for that. But a really interesting company, this one. As I said, one of the older Japanese sake breweries in Japan, and if you get the chance to try some of their sakes, it probably is worth doing, actually. I know in Kobe there's a street that's got a load of different sake breweries on it, so I think that's probably where, the Nada district, I'm sure that is what it's called, actually. So if you go to Kobe or Kyoto, you're going to find some really nice sakes in those very old cities. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Hakutsuru Shuzo for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below. You can there is an English version of that, incidentally. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out their the different sake tasting websites to see how to see all the different things that they've got, and it should give you a list of all the different ones. There are some very good sake websites which help you find some information on the smaller sake breweries and stuff like that. But to get information for these videos on the big ones is fairly easy, actually. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this sake then. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one comes in at 12.5% ABV, and this one is described as a Junmai Nigori. Now, as I've told you in the other videos, there's quite a few different styles of Japanese sake. So you have Seishu, which is basically a clear filtered sake. You've got the Nigori, which is the unfiltered one. You have Junmai, which is pure rice. You've got Honjozo, which is where they add a little bit of distilled alcohol to it. You have ginjo, which is where they mill the rice grain down to about 60% of its original size, and daiginjo, where they mill it down to about 50% of its original size. And those two, that's really just to kind of increase the purity of the sake. But quite a lot of the time, sakes will be a combination of two different styles. So in this case, Junmai Nigori, that tells you that it's both pure rice and it's an unfiltered sake. So you're just putting things together. But the rice grain that they've used in this one is at 70% milled rice. And like I say, most sakes tend to be ginjo or daiginjo, so to find a 70% milled rice I think is more common for the Nigori style than it would be for any other type of sake, actually. But yeah, it should be kind of cool. So as I've told you in the other videos, I'm by no means an expert when it comes to doing sake tastings and stuff, but the things that we should always rate sake on, according to the experts, are floral qualities, fruity qualities, earthiness, sweetness, dryness, acidity, impact, and tail. So I've got this little table down here that I'm going to fill in after I've done my video of this one, because you always want these to be original impressions and things like that. And that's what I've always said to you from the start of the channel. This whole tasting experience, if you like, is all about learning different things. So yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So as you can see, this one is presented in this kind of lovely box. Sayuri, incidentally, is quite a popular name for girls in Japan, but it's like a lily. It's this flower on the side here. It's that is a Sayuri in Japan. Those of you who are more into botany than I am will probably be able to say exactly what type of lily that is, but I'm sure it is just a lily. And it's kind of interesting, that, actually, because I remember, you know, lilies are the kind of symbol of death, if you like. That's what you give when someone's died, and, you know, in Japan they're very scared of that, actually. The death imagery is quite a you know, is quite an interesting, you know, there's a lot of really interesting and strange things around that, at least from a Western perspective, of course. But there you can see in the hiragana Sayuri, just to match the English letters there. And there you can see on the top, there is the Hakutsuru Shuzo badge there, since 1743. And the white crane, of course, after the Kano family, because it's Shirakano that they call their sake thing, you can see it is that thing. And you might recognise this symbol as being the same as Japan Airlines. I think that is actually the national bird of Japan, if I remember correctly. But yeah, product of Japan, 12.5% ABV. And it says here, only using selected rice and rice koji, Sayuri is brewed up carefully with the natural spring water of Roko. It has a refreshing aroma, natural sweetness and smooth aftertaste. Enjoy Sayuri chilled, shake well before serving. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. The bottle of this one. Ah, this is nice and pink. It's pink and fabulous, as I always say. My kids that I used to teach in the school always used to love that when I said the word fabulous. But yeah, it's nicely presented, this I have to say. So the thing you should always do with a Nigori is kind of invert it a little bit and let the sediment kind of filter through it, because it will tend to sink to the bottom. But there you can see, here is the label on the bottle there. It says on the back, this creamy sake passes through a mesh and is coarsely filtered. This process gives Sayuri a refreshing aroma, natural sweetness and a smooth aftertaste. So yeah, nicely presented. I have to say the label on this one is really very, very nice. There you can see the crane again on the bottle cap of this, and it tells you a little bit more about the sake on the back. But without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I will say for the glass in this, I'm using a whiskey glass because normally you want a quite stout and thicker glass. I mean, you can drink it out of the little cups, of course, but you know, for doing reviews and things like that, you want to be able to see what it looks like, of course. But let's get some out and into the glass then, and just look at this. I'll put a bit more in, why not? Don't get to drink sake all that often, so we might as well enjoy it. So yeah, as you can see with this one, and as you would expect from a Nigori sake, this one has poured a lovely, just big hazy sort of thing. It is just, you know, white rice. It's almost like, it's just almost milky, to be quite honest with you. It looks absolutely lovely. If I put my fingers behind that there, you can see there's pretty much no transparency to that. So if we hold it up to the light, yeah, really, really very hazy. Sometimes these ones can have different tinges, and that's usually when it's clear. Sometimes you can get a little bit of a turquoisey tinge or a green tinge or a yellow tinge. To me, there is maybe just a little slight hint of yellow to that one, but when it's a Nigori sake, you can't really comment on it in the same way as you might for other styles like seishus and junmai ginjos and all of this kind of thing. But it looks absolutely lovely. As I say, these Nigori sakes, a lot of the Japanese enthusiasts that I've spoken to thought I was strange because I really like these, and they are a bit cheaper, but they are very, very full flavoured in my opinion. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this. Nothing overly surprising about the appearance of this sake when you consider what style it is. So let's take a look at that aroma then and see how we get on. Oh yeah, that comes across really sweet actually. And that's, I suppose, that's probably one of the reasons why I like the Nigoris so much, because they are very, very sweet. So yeah, straight away with this one, you're going to notice there is quite a little bit of a grassy floral character pushing its way out of this one. The fruity notes, it does. You can pick up a little bit of an acidity coming out of this one. It does have a little bit of that almost citricy note, but nowhere near as much as you can get from some of these sakes right enough. But you will notice in the front of your nose a little bit of a kind of citricy acidity to this one. The rice, there is a good degree of sweetness to this, and a lot of kind of, it comes across in the aroma as being very, very thick right enough too. Earthiness would be the other thing to look for. There's maybe a teeny little bit of it, but I think this one is more kind of floral and citrusy rather than being earthy. Like I say, a little bit of a citricy note to it. It really, these Nigoris, they've always got, the Nigoris always have a really good depth of aroma to them. The other ones come across, like the Junmais and the Hanjosos and stuff, quite often they come across as very clean, but the Nigoris are just a little bit more raw and have a good complexity to them actually, so I really quite like this. I mean, As I say, little teeny hint of earthiness in there, but mainly quite floral and grassy for me. A little bit of a citric acidity to this one. In terms of fruitiness and things, maybe you've got a little bit of a kind of peary, apricot-y, papaya type thing to this one. Don't know if there's something maybe like a bit of pineapple or something like that too. They can give you, it's quite subtle, juicy fruits that you'll get out of some of these sakes, but you know, a lot of it is mainly more like sweet rice. I think a lot of sake enthusiasts say, oh, you get this kind of fruit and things out of it, but to me, they always come across as generally quite peary, sometimes gooseberry, sometimes like a little bit papaya at most and things like that. Some of these lighter, slightly tropical fruit notes, but for me, generally, this is quite a sweet smelling sake. It's quite bright in terms of its floral and grassy kind of qualities. There's a wee hint of earthiness there in the background. It's got a little bit of a citricy note to it as well. But overall it's mainly quite sweet and quite thick smelling, but there's just a few little complexities to it. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma before you actually get stuck into it, because some of these sakes can just be absolutely beautiful. And like I say, I think this is probably my first one from Hyogo Prefecture, if memory serves me correctly. So this one will be a little bit special as well. And if you just look on the camera there, you can see on the edge of the glass the little bits of the rice kind of sticking to the edge of it there. So that just tells you this whole thing is basically a suspension. If you leave it in the fridge for a while, it really does sediment down to the bottom of the bottle. But I mean, overall, this is a really, really nice looking sake, I have to say. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. So this one is the Sayuri Nigori, Junmai Nigori, coming in at 12.5% ABV with 70% milled rice from Hakutsuru Shuzo in the Nada district in Kobe in Hyogo Prefecture in Japan. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, Skål, Kampai. Oh yeah, that really is pretty nice. One of the things I should say about this as well is 12.5% in my experience is on the lower end of the scale for sakes. I mean, usually they tend to sit around the sort of 15% mark generally. So 12.5% is a little bit lower. But first thing we should talk about with this sake then is the impact. When this one comes in, it really comes in as very, very sweet. There's a little bit of sharpness when you take it in, but really it comes in and it smooths out really nicely. It feels very, very thick, this. This is one of the thickest sakes I think that I've come across yet. So yeah, when you take this one in, you'll find at the front of your tongue, there's a little bit of sharpness there. It becomes very, very wet, and then it just smoothens out over the whole rest of your tongue, actually. That's really nice, how it makes that kind of transition. Actually, we talk about the tail end a little bit later on, but the impact of this one is a little bit sharp, but then it gets very wet and it just smoothens out over the whole part of your tongue, actually. But you'll notice straight away with this is a very, very thick beast of a sake. So yeah, the other things we need to talk about then: floral qualities, fruitiness, earthiness, and you know, acidity as well, actually, and dryness. So yeah, I mean, the dry generally with sake, for me, the dry aspects come out on the edge of your palate, but I would say that this one generally, it's quite smooth. The more and more I drink of it, I think it leans a little bit more towards the kind of earthy side of things, actually. There is a little bit, if you go to the back corners of your palate and the back centre of your palate, I think there's a little bit of earthiness to this one. You get a bit of I don't think, in the aroma you get the impression of some acidity out of this, but you don't really get much of that when you actually take it in, to be honest. There's a little bit in the beginning, but otherwise it smooths out and becomes very kind of sweet, actually. Yeah, it really comes out and it becomes a little bit more sweet. This is a very sort of juicy and almost fruity sake for me in a lot of ways. There is an element, on the front corners of the palate, there is an element of a floral aromaticity to it, and then round the front curve of the palate it's a little bit more kind of lighter and grassy in my mind, but in the middle of your palate it really is very thick and smooth. It's almost a little bit like creamy or something, to be honest. the sweetness out of this sake is really very, very nice. So I would say it's mainly a sweet one, but it's got little hints of earthiness in it and a little bit of a floral quality too. And I think the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, so we're starting to talk about the tail end of this now, the further you go into the tail end of this, you start to get more kind of floral and grassy notes around the front edge of your palate. So that's quite an interesting point to make about this one too. But dryness, this isn't really a dry sake at all. I mean, this is one that's more, it really is more kind of thick and wet, and it's not the most oily one that you're going to come across. It does come across as being very thick but also very wet at the same time. It's, don't know, creamy is not really the right word for a Nigori sake, but I guess you kind of get the idea of where I'm going with that. I mean, just look at it. It's, you know, it's pretty much, it's almost a kind of milky thing. It's yeah, it's quite interesting that actually. But yeah, definitely not a kind of dry, this is definitely not a dry sake, this is, or an oily sake. It's definitely a big sort of, it's a big thick and slightly creamy sort of thing. So yeah, the flavour of this one though is really nice. Fruitiness, as I always say, the fruity side of sakes and beers and stuff like this, the fruits always come out towards the front of your palate, just behind the front kind of tip of the tongue. It's that little oily bubble where the fruity esters will always push their way out of the flavour of these different alcohols. But yeah, let's look at that now. So for me, yeah, if you pay attention to the front part of your palate, that's where you get the little bit of acidity that this, you know, this beer has. You do get a little bit of that kind of fruitiness in there. So I would say this one, it does have a little bit of a, it's kind of like, it is a little bit like a peary ester, but it's more like a mix of pear and kind of gooseberries, to be honest with you. Maybe there's a little bit of a kind of, I don't think so. I think it's straight up sort of pear and gooseberries. I think I'm maybe searching for something that's not there, if I was to say for like papaya and things. But yeah, it's really, the fruity side of this one is just very nice and light and subtle, I would say, but you'll notice that right behind the front part of your tongue. There is a little bit of a citrusy element to this one the further that you go into it, but I think sort of gooseberries, pears are probably the best sort of descriptor that you're going to get for this one actually. So pay attention to that behind the front of your palate there. It's not too complex, but the fruity side of it does give you just a little bit of a nice sweet side to it as well. It sort of aids the sweetness that comes out from the rice, but it very much comes across as a very sweet sake, this one generally. Quite sweet, quite thick, but not oily, and there's just little subtleties of earthiness, but the further you go into the aftertaste, you will notice more of the kind of grassy and floral notes on the front sort of curve of your tongue actually. You will notice it drying out a little bit the further you go into the tail end of it. The things that really linger in the flavour of this, so tail end now, the things that really linger for me on this one is some of the sweetness and the big thick parts of the rice there. You get that in the middle of your palate. Some of the grassy and floral notes, like I say, and just a teeny bit of that earthiness in the back corners of the palate too. But overall, compared to the other Nigoris that I can think of, this one, it's not the thickest one that I've come across and it's not the sweetest one. This one, I think what's unique about this one compared to the others I've had is the way the fruitiness comes out, the sort of gooseberry, peary notes, and also some of the grassiness as well. So it's quite, you know, it's definitely quite unique in that sense, I have to say. So I do like this one. I wouldn't hesitate to drink that again, but then again, you know, I do have the rest of the bottle to finish off here. So yeah, a really nice blend of flavours, this one. I sort of, compared to other Nigoris that I've had, as I say, not quite as sweet, but a nice sort of grassy, slightly drier tail end to it, I have to say. So yeah, thumbs up to Hakutsuru Shuzo for this one. A style of sake that I really enjoy, and they've pulled off something that I think is pretty nice. A little bit lower in alcohol, as I said though, and you will still though get a little bit of warmth down here from it, so that's never a bad thing. So mouthfeel then. As I said, this isn't the thickest of Nigoris that you're going to come across. There is a good degree of wetness to the style. There's a little bit of oiliness to it, but it's definitely by no means the most oily sake you're going to come across. You know, there's really, the oily quality in this is really, really very minimal. It's kind of towards the front of the palate, but the rest of the palate is quite wet and quite and you know, just almost a little bit creamy, to be honest with you, actually. So yeah, not the thickest of Nigoris you're going to come across, but a nice, slightly oily note in the front of the palate, but then smooth and wet the rest of the way you go through it. You do get a little bit of a dryness on the edge of your palate with this one the further you go into the aftertaste on the tail end, but you know, overall it's got everything that you would kind of expect. Definitely more fruity, a more fruity and grassy sort of Nigori compared to others, I think. So yeah, another nice example of the Nigori Zaki style. So thumbs up to Hakutsuru Shuzo for this one. They've done something really quite nice with this. So let's leave it at that for this tasting video then. Always cool to review new and different sakes for you, and definitely cool to visit one of the other bigger production sake breweries. I've got a feeling that these guys might actually be the biggest by volume sake producer in Japan. I'm sure I read that somewhere, the White Crane sake actually by Shirakano. So yeah, really interesting to review this one for you here. So I hope you've enjoyed another sake review. I always enjoy doing these as a little bit of a side project, as I mentioned earlier. So if you get the chance to try this one, I highly recommend that you do. A lot of Japanese sake enthusiasts, like I say, won't direct you to the Nigori first. Maybe it's better for you to try like a ginjo or a dai ginjo first. Get a slightly sweeter one, develop your taste for it, and then go on to something like the Nigoris, because they're a bit thicker and also quite sweet as well. So probably a Daiginjo or something is a good sort of step onwards to these the Nigori sakes. But this is a really nice example of it, a little bit more fruity and grassy compared to others, in my opinion. But yeah, let's leave it at that then. This one was the Sayuri Nigori, coming in at 12.5%, a Junmai Nigori from Hakutsuru Shuzo in Kobe in Hyogo Prefecture in Japan. Once again, thank you for watching my reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this sake in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite sakes as well are from Hakutsuru Shuzo. Let me know some other Kobe sake breweries that I should check out as well. Always great to hear from you guys, as I said earlier, and thank you again for watching my beer reviews and sake reviews and whiskey reviews and all of these kind of things. Until the next time, Slange just now, and I'll catch you guys later. The Sayuri Nigori from Hakutsuru Shuzo in the Nada district in Kobe in Hyogo Prefecture in Japan. Until the next time, Slange, Skull, Kampai, you will see some more sake reviews from Japan very, very soon. Cheers.